What's going on, everybody? Hope y'all can hear me. I'm actually going to be going live. I'm doing an interview today. They should be joining me shortly. Just so everybody knows, I am like super duper blind. I'm like super blind, so it's kind of difficult for me to read the comments. So pardon me for if I don't answer. If anybody asks questions and I don't get to them. In the meantime, I guess while I wait, give you guys a little bit of an update. My arm is doing a lot better. Um, I have an appointment on the 22nd with my surgeon again, and then I'll be able to start my physical therapy and eventually get back to work. So, um, how am I feeling? I'm actually feeling a lot better than I was a few weeks ago. I'm still having a bit of difficulty sleeping, but that's just because I'm a side sleeper and I can't sleep on my side. So let's see. Hi from Israel. Hi. How are you? Hopefully I'll be getting there soon. I have some things in the works, so hopefully I'll be making an announcement about a trip to Israel really soon. Uh, I'm trying to read the messages, and they are kind of uh, and here we go. I think I just let you in, Doc, but I don't see you. I don't know why. Trying to find you again. Go live. Go live. All right. Now I'm confident that I did it right. I don't know exactly what is going on right now. And I accept it. So I am not sure what is actually happening right now. I'm accepting the live request. I don't understand exactly why it is not. Uh, so,
All right, we made
hi,
it.
there you go.
Hey,
Sorry
Vegas, so good
about
to
that. I
see
am like so
you.
not tech savvy, like at all.
Well, here we made it. We made it. It's good to see you back.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back and not wince every single time I move my arm. So it's definitely a
I'm
good feel.
so glad you're better. The world needs your voice so much. And when we came across your account, we were so excited to hear your voice because you're so honest and you're so committed and you tell it like it is.
Right.
So I thought we could start with that. I mean, how did you get so passionate about talking about the things that you're sharing?
Well, to tell you the truth, I the what started all of this because I'd already had my page. It was like super small. I think I had like 869 followers when I did the first video that kind of sparked everything that's happening now. And I did that video on the day after, and
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
I didn't think that it was that I was saying anything controversial. I was really basically just saying anybody that is okay with what happened, if you stand for that, I'll stand on you. And that was pretty much it. And the reason that I did that was partially because of my wife. My wife is Israeli. Her family is over there. But more so than that, the footage that I saw from October 7th, there were these this frequency, I guess I could say, hearing those women that just kind of resonated with me, and I could not say anything. So I said what I said, and then the comment section really just kind of went crazy, and from that point, that's when I knew that I needed to kind of hold up a mirror to what was going on, and it just kind of went where it is now.
So, Bego, what were you passionate about? What were you speaking about before this happened, before October
Well,
7th?
before this, basically, what I use my IG kind of like my diary. I spoke about things that I was experiencing. I spoke about Black history, Black excellence, um, things like reparations, politics. It was just kind of a, a mosh posh of what kind of goes on in my head, which is pretty much what I'm doing now. Is just that because this is what is in the ethos. This, what I consume a lot of, and I happen to have a lot of opinions on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that your wife is Israeli, and I'm curious if, if that weren't the case, right? Like, why do you think people should care so
Well,
much
that's the
about what happened in
thing.
Israel on October 7th?
I've been asked that question, and in regards to would I be as passionate if I was not married to my wife? I can't say that. I can't say either way with any specificity. What I can say is that because of the kind of person that I am, seeing what I'm seeing, there's no way that I would be silent. I don't know that I would have as much knowledge of the history of the region and the history of the conflict without her. But there's no way that I could see, like, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a very big Hasidic community in New York. I've never had an issue with them. I have plenty of Jewish friends. So even if I wasn't married to my wife, to see these people experiencing the things that they're experiencing, there's no way that I'd be able to sit in silence and just watch it happen and
Well,
not say anything.
bless you. God bless you. I mean, so many of us have been faced with silence. So many people who we saw as friends and allies. It's a new chapter. So many of
Yeah.
us have woken up and started to ask ourselves. I'm sure you're asking yourself the same thing. What do people not see? Like, how is it possible that people who are, even educated in some of the United States' best colleges are essentially speaking out for terror? How are you understanding this right now?
I am not. I don't get it. I honestly I don't get it. The what I what I will say is I've always known that anti-Semitism was a thing, and I understood obviously how powerful it could be. I would have never thought 3 months ago that we would be where we are now, and how it happened. I just a perfect storm is all I could say. The amount of ignorance, the lack of proximity to Jewish people, I think definitely plays a role in that.
Oh, that's really
Being
interesting.
being as though Jews are the smallest population. My personal thing is I don't believe that there are too many people that have actually had contact with actual Jewish people in a meaningful way. They may know somebody who has a last name that they think might be Jewish, but they've never actually taken the time to actually get to know them. And I think that is a very, very big part of it, especially in places like New York, where we have a big Arab or Middle Eastern kind of community. Every store, like I'm from Brooklyn, every other store, if it's not a Hispanic person working in it, it's an Arab person working in it. So the proximity, at least in places like Brooklyn, even though there's a large Jewish population, there are still so many Middle Eastern and Arab people. I think that that kind of proximity is what makes them feel the need for allegiance. And I also think that the use of the buzzwords that are being utilized is a very, very big factor as to why so many people are taking the position that they've taken.
Interesting. So a few things in terms of people having more interaction with Jewish people, for example, that's really powerful in and of itself. Like, how can we, everyone who's listening to this conversation, all of us having this conversation, what can we do to reach across boundaries
Well,
and talk to people who might not, look like us or have the same religion as us?
I at this point, right now, I don't foresee enough people even having the actual interest in getting to know the Jewish people
Mm,
around them right now.
that
I
makes
think
me
that
so sad.
it is, and I was going to say I hate to say that, but gauging from what I've been seeing, I feel like people at this point are so steadfast in their position that they don't really know how to go about even looking at the other side, because then that's going to mean that they have to admit that they were wrong. And a lot of times people just can't do that, which is why,
It's
and it's funny
right.
about my
It's
wife
it's
and
it's so
I,
it's hard for some people to do that,
yeah,
right?
my wife and I and a good friend of ours last night, and we were talking, and we have to find out what the new normal is going to look like. Because at this point in the game, there's so many people who have either made a stance that is absolutely incorrect or they have stayed silent, which is the biggest form of complacency that there is. So now, after things kind of settle down, we're gonna have to navigate those new relationships and those new boundaries and all of those kinds of things. And I honestly, I don't know how that looks.
So you're basically saying I'm over here in Israel, so I'm not seeing, what's happening in Brooklyn. What does it look like? What are you sensing? What are you seeing in the streets
Well,
that is, yeah.
the thing that you're seeing on the news, and the reason I use Brooklyn, because I'm actually on the West Coast. I haven't lived in Brooklyn in a while, but the reason that I use Brooklyn is because A, that's where I'm from, and B, because there is a very large population of Hasidic Jews in that area. So for me, I already had that kind of familiarity. But the things that we're seeing on the news, where people are being harassed walking down the streets, and businesses are being disrupted, and they're painting that stupid BDS thing in front of businesses and stuff like that, and all of those things, I believe, are the factors, or the reasons rather, why finding that new normal is going to be as difficult as it is, because people have taken an actual stance and they're wrong. And,
They're wrong, right?
and they're wrong
So
because
how
we've
did
been
how does that
manipulated.
even happen, right? Like the most atrocious thing, the most inhumane acts were recorded by the people who actually perpetrated them. They were put out into the world, and now somehow there's this huge amount of people that's like siding with them. So what are the, I mean, you're faced with all kinds of arguments on the daily. So what are people saying when they argue with you that, you know,
The
somebody who tells you Hamas is right? Like, what does that even
they
sound like?
they they often have no idea. They quote the same thing. Well, that's just what happens when you're oppressed for 75 years, and or they'll use projection. That's one of their favorite things. Well, the IDF soldiers are raping women left and right. Nobody's saying anything about that. All they do is literally project the things that they know that Hamas has done, and try to project that on Israel. And the thing that bothers me the most is, let's say all of that were true. what does that have to do with a Jewish person in Wisconsin or in LA or in Russia? That has nothing to do with those people. But
Yeah.
again, going back to what I said, the anti-Semitism is extremely strong, and apparently it has been lying dormant in a lot of people. And the way that the situation has been manipulated has allowed that anti-Semitism to wake up.
So when you're looking for truth, I mean, what can you recommend for people who want to understand what's actually going on? Who, I mean, who the Jewish people, I could say the Jewish people, but what Jewish values are, what's actually happening on the ground. Where can people look for that? You're doing such a great job in sharing.
Well, I look everywhere. I think one of the biggest downfalls, as far as people's perception of this whole conflict, is they're getting their information from social media, and I don't even necessarily think that that's a terrible thing. My issue is that people tend to only investigate one side of a situation, and as far as this goes, I really don't understand how so many people went in the direction that they did because October 7th happened first. Like I understand the bombings and all of the death and destruction that we've been seeing being uncomfortable, but none of that happens without October 7th. And somehow these people have been able to manipulate the minds of people to where they don't even acknowledge October 7th. All they see and care about is the retaliation. And the
Yeah, it's
worst
interesting, like
part about that
how overly, go ahead.
the worst part about that, I was going to say, is that every Jewish person, every Israeli person that I've spoken to feels the exact same way. Nobody wants to see what we have been seeing. At the
No,
same
we don't.
time, nobody seems to understand that if the retaliation does not happen, October 7th happens again and again and again.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's a
so true.
terrible time.
Nobody wants to see that. I mean, listen, I'm in Israel. Every time I hear an air raid siren, and I have the privilege of going to my safe room, my bomb shelter. I mean, have the privilege. My heart breaks for the mothers in Gaza who
We're
don't
going.
have that. And at the same time, I feel I want them to be liberated. I want their liberation so much. But that means that they'll live in a society where their government wants them also to have protection, a government that would invest in their safety more than it does in the destruction of their neighbors.
And
And
this is what I don't understand.
we want these kids to grow up and be free. They're being educated on terror from the time they're young, and we want to liberate. We want a free Palestine, more than anything in Israel. What does that even mean? People who say free Palestine
They
for what?
have no idea what they're talking about, which is even like the term from the river to the sea. We've seen time and time again these people that are out at these rallies, they have no idea what river or what sea. They couldn't point to Israel or Palestine on a map. They don't know anything about the region. They actually, I've spoken to people that believe, that really thought that Palestine was Palestine, the Palestine that we're talking about now, prior to 1948. I've had people tell me that I was lying, that, that, that Britain had control of the region. I've had people tell me that. So they don't they have no idea, and that, in my opinion, goes back to the usage of those buzzwords. When you hear colonizer, when you hear genocide, when you hear apartheid, especially when you're an American, those terms trigger something in you. And the fact that these people have been able to associate those terms with Israel is just, it's masterful. I mean, at
Yeah, it's
the end
it's
of the
it's
day,
true. It's
their
like this
PR
in this year,
is
2024, a Jew is people associate Jews with being, white colonizers, blonde, blue-eyed. If someone were blonde and blue-eyed in Germany during the Holocaust, they would have gotten out. So we're allowing people to define, who we are, what we look like, when it's really not the case. And
I
there's
say
so much
that
diversity.
all the time. When people say, "Oh, they're not but white people," if they were white people, why are white supremacists against them?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why is
Absolutely.
it that Nazis are screaming, "Jews will not replace us"? That does not that's not the same team. That's not that's not how that's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not team humanity, is it?
Not at all.
So I'm curious to hear from you. You've also been getting these anti-black comments on your feed.
Yeah.
What is that all about? I mean,
Well, that's another reason why I felt it necessary to kind of hold up the mirror, because in my experience, anti-blackness and anti-Semitism go hand in hand, just like the struggles of Black people and Jewish people.
yeah.
And there are so many similarities that people just kind of refuse to see. And in my opinion, I just choose to acknowledge it.
And so how did you get there? Because it's such a powerful point. I mean, I'll tell you, I was raised on Martin Luther King's speeches and to really value freedom and humanity, and those were part of my Jewish values, in all honesty. That was what I learned in Sunday school and what my parents taught me. And I think that in so many ways, the minority experience, like, we need to all empathize with one
Right.
another. It's not always playing out like that, but I'm curious how you came to that understanding, because not everyone who's Black and Jewish understands our unity.
Right. Well, again, going back to the post that I did on October 8th, it was the comment section was 50% anti-Semitism, 50% anti-blackness.
Oh
I
my
had
God.
people calling me coon, calling me the N-word, Uncle Tom, like any variation of anything derogatory that you could possibly think of, I was called, because I decided that, and at this point, mind you, not one bomb or missile had been dropped in Gaza at all. This is October 8th, I'm talking
Right.
about.
Israel had done nothing in
Nothing.
retaliation. They were literally gathering supplies that they
And
didn't
and
have.
and trying to gather the bodies and things like that. This is
Oh
what is
gosh.
happening on October
Yeah.
8th. This is what's happening on October 8th. And I have people telling me that because I am vehemently against rape, not just rape of Israeli women, rape,
All
period,
women.
of any human.
Yes.
Like, you don't take that. Like, period. That is the ultimate violation. And I have always been the same. I had the same energy when it comes to that. So the fact that I could speak about that and be called a coon, that kind of raised my eyebrow.
Yeah, there's something wrong with
And the
that.
fact
There's something very
that
wrong with that.
so many people were saying these things, and again, this is the 8th, so this is before there were so many troll and bot accounts that were pro-Palestine. So this, in my opinion, this is like people's actual feelings about the situation. Like, they don't care about what we just saw. I'm a coon because I don't think that it's okay that that happened to those people. And
Mm.
the reality is that anywhere that that would happen, I would have the same kind of outrage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting, after October 7th, living in Israel, waking up to the silence, because I hadn't met people like you yet. I was still following all these thought leaders who were been silent ever since. I don't follow them anymore. I've found people who care about humanity, who are speaking out just like you. And I started discovering that those voices are also uncovering, Biga, the same violations in the surrounding Muslim countries, right? Over here in the Middle
Yeah.
East, it is legal to rape women. It is legal to rape your wife in several
Right.
countries. You can get hung for being gay in 19 countries in this neighborhood. And where in Israel we have a huge gay pride parade. We we have a democracy in a tough region, and people aren't seeing it. People,
I I kind of think that part of that is because, how could I put this? Because Israel doesn't really necessarily brag about that.
oh,
In my opinion,
that's a really good point.
and the reason that they don't brag about it is because they're just like, that's how it should be. You should be able to be who you are and love who you love and serve whatever God you serve. Like, that's just how it should be. So I understand not boasting about being normal. The thing
Right.
is
Because
that
we think it's normal. We think it's normal that 20% of our citizens are Arab and we all live in peace and we have relationships with each other and they're in the Knesset and we have diversity and
the
equity,
problem
and we're not
is
bragging
that
about it, is what you're
the
saying.
Arab nations that are surrounding you don't have any of that. So now it takes it out of the box of normal to abnormal. Now it's something, it's totally different because you're doing something that is outside of the region. There's nowhere else you're going to go and see a Jewish person in a place of power. There's nowhere else you're going to go in that region and be gay or trans or any part of the LGBTQIA community and be able to be you except there. And like I said, it's not something that's bragged about because it's like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is regular.
Yeah,
Every
it
day
makes
is
a
how
lot
we
of
are.
sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's
And
like
that's
what
not to
we've
say
worked
that
so hard to
that
create.
that's not to say that there are not issues. There's going to be issues in every country that has a government. The and and that's another reason why, excuse me, why I take such issue with what's going on around the world, because I know that there have been protests for years in Israel against things that have been going on. I know that. I've seen it. The problem is that all of these people around the world have not seen it. A lot of people don't know that there were people protesting against Bibi right up until
Right,
October 7th. People
right,
don't
right.
realize that.
It's so true. We've been so critical of our own governments, and we have the freedom to do
Exactly,
so. Whereas
because it's a democracy. Thank you.
we have the freedom to do so. Whereas, people are having to escape Egypt for their lives because they spoke about what happened on October
Right.
7th, and it's not in the news. But here in Israel, we do. We of course we don't have a perfect government. Of course we're critical of our government because we care about democracy and humanity. Everything that you're saying is so true.
And the fact that I know these things to be true. This is not something that is these are not even things that my wife tells me, which would be credible because her family is there. But these are
Yeah.
things that if you all you got to do is look. You could Google these things. It's not hard at all. The thing is that people don't care, and it's easy for them to be spoon fed something. If they hear it the way people think, at least here in America, the way people think tends to be if there are 20 people